We are all delighted to be receiving the very first edition of the Praful Bidwai Memorial Award. It is very special. It's also ironic that we are observing Praful's anniversary same day as the special NSG meeting is taking place and Kudankulam is about to go critical. It's, well, appropriate also, I guess, apart from being ironic, that that struggle is on. And you can just see how the media are not covering it. There is no alternative dissenting voice visible anywhere on the whole idea of what's going on and our wonderful faith in nuclear energy and nuclear weapons as well. I'd like to tell you a few words about Pari and about the media itself. You know, one of the things when we have had nothing but goodwill because everybody agrees that the media don't cover rural India. I just want to say they don't cover urban India either. Okay? The data that we have, the datelines from different parts of the country, if you look at the newspapers, you do the analysis of the channels as the Center for Media Studies does every year. The CMS founded by Dr. Bhaskara Rao. No newspaper or channel in this country covers 10% of this country. Now just what the CMS has been doing for many years now, is that they take prime time coverage in 6 major television channels, 3 Hindi, 3 English. They take front page coverage in 6 newspapers, 3 English, 3 Hindi. What does it show? For the channels at prime time, 66% of their news comes from Delhi. That's it, Delhi. Bombay is the next biggest because that's where, Bollywood is. And the number, well, just to pick up today's newspaper and look. I did yesterday with the Times of India in Mumbai, 6 city pages. There was one story from Thane and one from Pune, and the others were all Mumbai city proper. The national pages, there were about 7, and they were 80% Delhi. Okay. So they found that Delhi occupies most of the space of what we call India and urban India. And within urban India, it's the 4 metros and 6 to 8 tier 2 or tier 3 cities. And how many cities have you got with more than 1 million population? Something like 30, 35, something like that, more. Okay. So you don't really cover urban India either. As Paranjoy mentioned, you can see it in the beats, all of which disappeared in the last 20 years, 25 years. When we entered journalism, every newspaper had a labor correspondent, every newspaper had an agriculture correspondent. Today the agriculture correspondent is somebody who covers the agriculture ministry. It's not contract farming, it's farming of contracts that gets covered. The inability to absolutely look at what's going on. NABARD's latest position paper on rural credit in Maharashtra, where agricultural credit, worth 3 lakh crores, 53% of that is going to Mumbai city and suburbs. Agricultural credit, 53% of 3 lakh crores is going to Mumbai city and suburbs. Okay. So forget, you can look at who are the farmers in Mumbai and surrounding cities. And the loan composition that people like Professor Ramakumar and others have shown us is most of your agricultural credit now is disbursed in urban banks and metro branches, meaning much of that credit in Mumbai is agricultural credit of Maharashtra is distributed in the branches of Malabar Hill, Kafparet, Bandra. I don't know how many small farmers you know who live there and who take loans worth 25 crores, which is what the major composition increase is. I know a couple, one is called Mukesh and the other called Anil, but You know, apart from them, I can't think of too many. So you can see that the loans below 50,000, loans below 2 lakhs have collapsed. Loans about 10 to 25 crores have more than doubled. So you know where they're going. Who's getting that money? You can look at it. None of this is in any way interesting to the newspapers or the channels, which simply, as I said, don't cover urban India. Why the hell will they cover rural India? Okay. Now, when you try doing this, and I want to tell you a few things which I consider to be unique features of this effort called PARI. There are lots of people in the PARI team we cannot acknowledge because they are young journalists working in corporate media, in mainstream press, and we cannot tell you their names, but they all work for us. There's a significant number of them around here at this moment. So it shows you that the interest, is there, the drive is there. Actually, one or two people are so senior they can do it openly, like the executive editor of CNN IBN has made three films for us. And of course, she's on a year's sabbatical, which I suppose you need to take a year off to be able to survive working in television. So we are also today, I think, the one site where stories are appearing in 10 languages. 10 languages. And we aim to expand to cover a lot more languages. We've made the provisions for that. Most of the translations are done, almost all of them, by volunteers. So you can go up there. If you have a language, right now, for instance, we haven't yet had a piece in Odia. Someone's working on it, but we've had pieces in Assamese, in Urdu, in Tamil. And we think that's there. The archival thing is going to be very important 30 years from now, 40 years from now. Second, we don't use the thing of a separate portal for each language. We don't. Because if my old comrade Raja is reading about Tamil Nadu, he may want to read the articles about Tamil Nadu in Tamil, but the other articles in English. We are all of us bilingual, trilingual in some way or the other. So you can go up there and choose the language and read what you want to. Today we had some very good news. 3 days ago, less than 72 hours ago, a young stringer of the Times of India did a fabulous little piece on the struggle of the Uttarakhand villagers in Pithoragarh. Their huge struggle was for a post office, because your nearest post office is 70 kilometers away in the district headquarters. Today, for whatever reason, the telecom minister read the piece and they opened the post office today in 24 hours. The idea and soul of PARI is about the everyday lives of everyday people. We're trying to get as much to the ground as we can, and we are breaking with the idea of professional journalist, because that professional is now defined by the corporate world. So suppose you went around writing about post offices in Uttarakhand or farm suicides in Vidarbha, you will be dubbed an activist. You're not a journalist. But if you sit, and polish a stool in the newsroom for 30 years with the seat of your trousers, turning out yard upon yard of corporate press releases as news, you're a professional. And you do that for 30 years, you're a veteran professional, seasoned professional. Okay, so we've broken with that. Now we are finding a huge amount of response and interest in what's going on. And of course, when you do this, well, even in places like the Indian Institute of Management, where I've been speaking recently in a couple of them, but wherever you speak about it, the first thing that in our times, in our generation, this is wonderful stuff, but what is your revenue model? Newspapers, magazines, books, most of them started a few decades ago with an idea, with an ideal, with a hope, with a determination not with a revenue model. Okay? So I was in the Indian Institute of Management at Bangalore, and Karnataka being the venue, I was asked this question. So this is fantastic, we love PARI, but what is your revenue model? after confessing that I did not and do not have one, I said, look, speaking in Karnataka, let me say there are, by the way, guys, you should know this, that the advertising revenue model on which the modern media are based has collapsed around most of the world. It's in a state of collapse. The New York Times takes a loan of $1 billion from a Mexican billionaire called Carlos Slim. The print media are in collapse, and the internet media, the digital media, have not developed one. But the obsession is with revenue model. So there were the young students of IIM Bangalore asking me about. I said, see, I have two people, both of them from Bangalore, or connected with Bangalore or Karnataka, whose revenue models I admire. One was Veerappan. Yeah. Now, he had an all-inclusive revenue model from the forest minister to the forest guard. It worked for 40 years, damn it. Of course, as I explained to them, I said, have they yet, in your classes in IIM, have they yet come to the part? Of course, there are some risks in the Veerappan model. But what's entrepreneurialism without a little risk? Haven't they come to the part yet about higher the risk, higher the reward? The other person also from Bangalore, whose revenue model I have never ceased to admire, is Vijay Mallya. 10,000 crores of your money living in Mayfair. Okay, no risks also. Okay, so this is the revenue model thing that they're obsessed with. I asked them, tell me what would have happened if Valmiki, before writing the Ramayana, had to get his revenue model cleared by a bunch of venture capitalists and a couple of CAs, or Shakespeare before he did Antony and Cleopatra. Would you have had a tragic ending? It would not have been allowed. Disney has made its own version of Hunchback of Notre Dame that has a happy ending. Everybody lives, okay, including Quasimodo. We desperately need that we have organizations in media that are not driven by profit. We don't want them to lose money, and certainly we don't want to lose money, and certainly we are losing money like hell. But we don't exist on the idea that there has to be a revenue model and something has to happen. But having said that, let me invite you, let me say my revenue model, I see about 200 of my revenue models seated here in this auditorium today. We've divided India, since no media in this country covers more than 6 to 8% of the country physically, we've divided in India into regions that are historically evolved regions or physically natural regions, or both. Like, say, for instance, Bundelkhand, natural region, physically and historically evolved region. The Malabar, both, a natural region, physically and historically evolved. We found that there are 95 regions like that, if we include the islands. 95 regions. And we have decided, and we're making this announcement to you, you can back in any way you want. You can back an individual directly. You can do what you like, but back us and help us build that revenue model. Here's what we're going to do. In every one of these 95 regions, over the next 48 months, we're going to put a fellow for 3 months. That fellow can be a journalist, writer, poet, photographer, video filmmaker, documentary maker, whatever. Yeah? But 95, every single region, we're going to have someone there who develops some kind of domain expertise, some kind of knowledge of that region, lives there for 3 months. We already have 8 in the field, including one in Sundarbans who is here today. And the idea is that 95 PARI fellows plus 5 non-region fellows, because if you're going to cover climate change, you're going to cover coastal zones, you're going to cover, say, migrations and migrant labor. It's a huge thing. We are finding that the biggest section on rural India's website is rural migrants in urban India, because that's the flow. That's where the flow is coming from. Each of these fellowships is going to cost between 2 lakhs and 2,25,000, because having been somebody who lived on journalism fellowships most of his life, I don't want to give people a crummy, useless, damned amount on which they can't get any work done and are just struggling to stay. We have now, like in Kerala, we are planning not to use professional journalists at all to cover the regions, but the women of the Kudumbashree movement. They are going to make their films, they are going to write the stories, they are going to do it. We are looking for collaboration with Khabar Lahariya in Bundelkhand. We have just received a brilliant photo essay from a Kuruba Adivasi in the Bandipur forest on wildlife through her eyes. And she has shot a full-grown leopard at 4 meters distance. Because she works in those fields. Okay? As close to everyday lives, everyday people, stories being told by those people themselves to the extent possible. Please help us. Please chip in and help make Pari your own property. It's a trust. It's not privately owned. It has no corporate linkages, nothing. Okay. We don't take corporate grants, we don't take government grants. So we'll make a film for someone on any basis. Labor department, labor ministry might ask us for a film. They'll never do that. And if they did, it wouldn't be ever carried. But if they did ask me to make one, I'd do it as a transaction like a freelancer writing for a newspaper or a magazine. You can help in various ways to build this. I want to tell you this. If we pull off those 95 regions, it'll be the first time there is a database in India which represents every corner of this country. And there is no major country in the world where such a database exists. You have the Smithsonian, which is a top-down institution. Here you're having landless laborers, you're having farmers, you're having this Kuruba Adivasi who's done this. Another thing that I want to tell you, those 100 fellows that we will have, we are determined, absolutely determined, that they will represent the social composition of India, which means there will be 16 Dalit journalists, there will be 8 Adivasi journalists, half the fellows will be women, and there will be a considerable number of minorities, journalists from the minorities also. Of course, it's quite an insane idea, but believe me, it can be done. It will be done. I am seeking your help and your support for this to be done. I'm so glad to be here again this evening, and again with my old teacher right here up on this platform. The very first lecture I attended as an MA student was Romila Thapar's Ancient History, and it does seem a bit ancient now, back in 77, but that was the first class I sat in on. And Mukul and I were thinking, I think that none of us ever forgets that first class and that first teacher of ours, right, Mukul? So I'm really thrilled to be here. I'm very proud to be having this award, but I also want to tell you that when I'm talking about composition of the kind of fellows, please notice that Pari's editors are overwhelmingly women. Okay? And this is also another thing where we are trying to observe that kind of composition, that kind of breakup, diversity of this country in everything we do. You have actually some astonishing people over here who have pulled off things that I'm actually a hindrance. Okay, I do the talking, but they run Pari. They make it work. They make it function. I'm going to ask every one of you again. Tomorrow, you're going to see a very Pari kind of two stories I want to tell you about. I'll conclude with that. 3 days ago, as I said, we had this brilliant young reporter writing about the struggle for a post office in Pithodgarh, and the post office was opened today. Tomorrow, you're going to see another story. I don't know if it will lead to anything, but it should tell you what the hell is going on in your country. I maintain that what we are all referring to as a drought is a mega water crisis that is not necessarily linked to a bad monsoon. That even when your monsoon is damn good, your water crisis is going to sharpen and worsen because of what we do with water. My colleague Jaideep Hardikar of the Telegraph and I spent a lot of May driving down the rivers from the source of the Godavari, downstream a few hundred kilometers, from the source of the Krishna downstream a few hundred kilometers. In the holiest part of the Godavari, the Ramkunda, the bathing ghat, which you have references to for centuries in literature, has run dry. But don't worry, we are Maharashtra and we know what to do about it. The river, the Ramkunda, the river is being kept wet by pouring 90 tankers of water into it every day. We are the only people in the world pouring tanker water into a river. Coals to Newcastle has nothing on this. Okay? I mean, forget about taking coals to Newcastle. We are pouring official, this is not secretive, there was no expose or investigation. It's happening openly, and of course there are huge contracts for it. Every day, 90 tankers worth of water is being poured into a river. Okay? So that story you will see up tomorrow morning. Look at what we are doing. Oh, we also have, Romila, the online library called Resources, where we put up government reports, non-governmental reports of authenticity. Believe me, why is it so important? The National Commission for Enterprises in the Unorganized Sector produced 11 devastating reports, angering Dr. Manmohan Singh so much, because he had given that commission to his old classmate and buddy, Professor Arjun Sen Gupta. The least that Sen Gupta could have done was to tone down the reports, right, on poverty, on hunger and things, idiotic things like that. Manmohan didn't calculate on that thing which I call the post-retirement radical syndrome. You know, people become suddenly terribly radical. Those reports are devastating. So what happens when they come out with these devastating reports? The first paragraph of the first report said 836 million Indians live on less than 20 rupees a day. First paragraph. You remember that, Comrade Raja. They took down the entire website after the commission term was over. So I rang up the ministry and I said, what happened to the what happened to the website? They said, sir, commission ka term ho gaya na. The term is over, so we dismantled the website. So I said, okay, then let's dismantle the Parliament website. Okay, term was over a month ago. This was during the election period in 2014. Luckily for you guys, we have all those reports saved in full text. We don't put up links, we put the full text. So you have an online library which including teaches students how to cite a document, how to cite or how to look for the authenticity of it, etc. So there's tons of stuff that you people can do. Help us, help you. Thank you.